Hello everyone, this is Cozy Night Frights. Before you go to sleep, please like the video and subscribe and comment where you watch from and what time are you listening. They told stories about Black Lake. Not on TV. Not online. Just whispered, passed down over campfires and bar counters, between people who never looked you quite in the eye when they spoke of it. The kind of stories that ended in a quiet shrug or a nervous laugh. Because the lake didn't do anything. Not lately. It just sat there. Flat. Black. Deep. They didn't fish in it anymore. No boats, no docks, no swimming. There used to be a lodge nearby, a summer camp even. Long gone now. The forest had eaten what was left. But people still disappeared there sometimes. And sometimes, people came back different. Isaac Cole didn't believe in any of that. Not when he bought the land. He believed in opportunity. Cheap acreage, scenic woods, water access, perfect for a quiet cabin renovation. He had a vision. Modern rustic, exposed beams, maybe even a YouTube series. A place to reset his life. The cabin he bought was old. Pre-1950s, maybe. Made of thick cedar logs, some blackened with age. The front porch sagged. Ivy crept across the side like veins. He didn't even see the lake his first night. It was too dark. The trees too dense. But he heard it, soft waves lapping at the shore, even though there was no wind. When he went out in the morning, coffee in hand, and followed the trail to the edge of the woods, he saw it at last. Black Lake. It looked like ink. Still as death. No ducks. No dragonflies. No reflection. Just the flat, dark surface stretching wide and silent. A single thought crossed Isaac's mind, unbidden. This place remembers things. He shook it off. Took a sip of his coffee. The breeze shifted, cool and sour, like algae rotting beneath the surface. And behind him, deep in the woods, he thought he heard something moving. Walking. Slow. Isaac turned toward the sound. Branches swayed high above, but the ground-level woods were still. No birds called. No squirrels darted. Whatever had moved had done so quietly. Deliberately. He stepped off the trail. Just a few feet into the brush. Enough to see. Leaves crackled underfoot, too loud in the silence. "Hello?" he called. "Anyone there?" No answer. He waited. For a moment, he thought it had been nothing. Wind, maybe. Or a deer. He exhaled and turned back toward the lake. And caught a flicker of something just at the edge of vision. A shape between two trees. Tall. Too tall. And narrow. Wrong. His heart jolted. When he looked directly, it was gone. He stood there, breath shallow, staring between the trunks. Nothing. Just trees. "Get a grip," he muttered. "You're alone. That's the whole point." He made it back to the cabin just after 10. The coffee had gone cold. The wind picked up, rustling the trees just enough to sound like whispers. That night, he unpacked the rest of his gear. The solar lights out front flickered weakly. He cooked pasta on a propane stove and ate in silence. Tried to watch something on his laptop but couldn't get a signal. He scrolled through a few saved videos. Stopped on one he didn't recognize. It was just labeled, Lake.movie. He hadn't saved anything by that name. He played it. The screen stayed black at first. Then the image slowly sharpened, the lake, at night. Still. Flat. Dead silent. Then, just before the 30-second mark, a hand broke the surface. Pale. Long-fingered. Reaching up toward the sky. And then, It waved. Isaac slammed the lid shut. But even after the screen went dark, he could still see it. That hand. That wave. Isaac paced the cabin. The laptop sat untouched on the table, screen closed like a mouth clamped shut. He hadn't reopened it. Didn't dare. The file couldn't be real. He hadn't downloaded anything, hadn't connected to Wi-Fi. He'd brought the laptop fresh, wiped, with only blueprints and budgeting software installed. It was a tool. Not a toy. And yet, Lake.mov. He waited an hour. Then two. Then, hands twitching, he flipped the screen open. No file. Nothing in the downloads. Nothing in the video player history. The file didn't exist. But he'd seen it. The wave. He left the cabin in the dark and went to the lake. He needed to see it. Not the video version, the real thing. Just to prove to himself it was normal. Water was water. There were no hands. No waving. The trail was quiet. Soft wind brushed the trees. Insects buzzed faintly. At the edge of the lake, he stopped. Stared. The water was as still as before. Black and wide and too smooth. Like polished glass over something bottomless. He squatted, picked up a stone, and tossed it. Plunk. The ripples spread out evenly. No hand. No motion. Just water. He exhaled slowly. See? Just a lake. Then he noticed something near the tree line to his left. A shape. He turned his flashlight. A pile of stones. Small, perfectly stacked. 6 of them. A cairn. He hadn't built it. It hadn't been there yesterday. He approached it slowly. Something lay atop it. A photograph. Old. Water-stained. Folded at the corner. He picked it up. It showed a man standing at the same lakeside trail. His face turned away. But in the water beside him. A hand. Waving. Isaac turned the photo over. No writing. No date. Just that slick old paper texture, the kind you only find in photo albums buried in basements. His fingers felt cold holding it, like it had been taken out of the lake, not just found beside it. He looked back at the cairn. It was still there. Still perfectly stacked. He hadn't imagined it. But the wind had picked up now, and in it, a sound. Not wind through leaves. Not water. A voice. Soft. Low. Coming from the direction of the cairn. Return. He stepped back. Nope, he whispered, clutching the photo tight. He didn't run. Not exactly. But his feet moved fast enough through the woods that twigs snapped, brush scratched his arms, and something behind him laughed, high and quiet, like a child's voice tucked between branches. Back at the cabin, he locked the door. Bolted it. Shoved a chair against it for good measure. He sat on the couch for hours, eyes on the door, photograph in his lap. Midnight passed. Then 1 o'clock. Just after 2 o'clock, he heard it. Not outside. Inside. A single, wet drip. Followed by another. And another. He rose slowly, flashlight in hand. Followed the sound to the hallway. Then to the bathroom. There, in the bathtub, lay the photograph. The same one. Soaked. The ink beginning to run. The photo he still held in his hand. He looked down. It was gone. Vanished. And now, written across the bottom of the one in the tub, in jagged black letters. You saw us. Isaac didn't sleep. He sat on the floor across from the bathroom, flashlight resting on his knee, staring at the photograph now pinned beneath the faucet's slow drip. Each drop blurred the inked message a little more, but not enough to erase it. "You saw us." He hadn't shown the video to anyone. Hadn't posted it, hadn't spoken about it aloud. How did they know? What were they? At dawn, he stepped outside. The lake was covered in mist. Not fog, mist. It hovered just above the surface in a perfect layer, unmoving, like a veil drawn over something sleeping. He didn't approach it. He walked the opposite way, into the woods behind the cabin, toward the tree line that marked the edge of his property. He needed cell service. A signal. A voice that didn't come from the wind or the water. 30 minutes later, standing on a hill where the canopy broke open, his phone pinged. 1 bar. Then 2. He called his brother. It rang once. Then cut out. He tried again. Voicemail. He opened his photos. Tried to send a picture of the cairn. The screen flickered. Froze. Then crashed. When it rebooted, the photo album had only one picture. Not the cairn. Not the photo. Just an image of the lake. Dark. Silent. And in the distance, near the center, something floating. A head. Pale. Hair fanned out like seaweed. Eyes open. Looking directly at the camera. Except Isaac had never taken that photo. And the metadata said it had been saved 5 minutes ago. While his phone was off. He turned and ran. Back to the cabin. Back through the trees. And as he burst through the brush, panting, he saw something carved into the cabin door. Not deep. Just enough to catch the light. 4 words. "Bring us the rest." Isaac stood frozen. The words carved into the door seemed fresh. The cuts were clean. No moss, no weathering. Like whoever, or whatever, had done it had finished moments before he returned. "Bring us the rest." He didn't know what that meant. The rest of what? The photos? The memories? The bodies? His stomach turned at the thought. He opened the door cautiously. Everything inside looked the same, almost. Something had changed. It took him a few minutes to realize what. The photo in the bathtub was gone. And in its place, a second cairn. Right there. Inside the house. 6 small stones, stacked neatly on the tile. His breath caught. The stones were wet. He didn't touch them. Instead, he searched every room. Top to bottom. Drawer by drawer. Looking for anything out of place. Anything moved. He found it in the attic. A small wooden box. Old. Unmarked. Inside, a handful of yellowed photographs. All different people. All at the lake. Some smiling. Some crying. One mid-scream. He flipped one over. A name written in faint pencil. Harold G., 1958. Never surfaced. Isaac backed away from the box like it was hot. He hadn't put it there. No one could have snuck in. Not without being seen. Not without tracks. He picked up the box and carried it outside. Toward the lake. The mist had risen higher now, curling through the trees like breath. As he approached the water, a ripple spread across the surface. Then another. And then, rising slowly, 5 pale shapes. Just under the water. Heads. Watching. Waiting. He dropped the box on the shore. The ripples stopped. The lake went still again. He turned and walked away. But as he reached the porch, something was waiting on the top step. A third cairn. And this time, a note tucked between the stones. You forgot one. The note trembled in Isaac's hand. You forgot one. He read it again. And again. The handwriting was slanted and old-fashioned, almost cursive, but jagged, like it had been written in haste. Or pain. His eyes scanned the woods, the porch, the roof. No movement. No signs of life. He opened the door, heart hammering, and dropped the note on the kitchen table. Then he looked at the cairn again. Still 6 stones. Stacked the same way as before. The message was clear, the box had been a test. And he had failed it. He returned to the attic. Opened the box again. 16 photographs remained. 16 names. But how could one be missing? He checked the attic top to bottom, beneath the floorboards, in the crawl space. Nothing. No photo. Until, in the far corner of the attic, hidden behind the last beam, taped to the inside of the sloped ceiling, a final photograph. This one was different. Newer. Full color. Not water-stained. And it showed him, standing at the edge of Black Lake. Back turned. Hands at his sides. Just like in the one he'd found days earlier, except this was now. He recognized the shirt. The cargo pants. The boots. And the reflection in the water showed what he hadn't seen. Something behind him. Tall. Shadowed. Smiling without a face. Isaac sat down hard on the attic floor, heart thundering. The note hadn't meant a forgotten person. It had meant him. He was the one missing from the set. The box hadn't come with the cabin. It had come for him. Outside, wind stirred. Leaves shifted. Water lapped the shore, growing louder. And the faintest sound, half sigh, half laugh, carried through the trees. Now we're complete. Isaac didn't remember falling asleep. But he woke on the attic floor, neck stiff, mouth dry, the photo of himself clutched tight in his hand. The sunlight leaking through the slats of the window was dim and gray. Maybe late afternoon. Or maybe the sky was just darker now. The house creaked beneath him, its old bones shifting like it, too, had awakened from a bad dream. Or into one. He stood slowly, every joint aching. Downstairs, the silence had thickened. No birds outside. No insects. Not even the distant hiss of wind in the trees. Just silence. And then, beneath it, a new sound. Low. Faint. Like water moving through pipes. But deeper. Too deep. He pressed his ear to the floor. It wasn't plumbing. It was chanting. Distant voices, submerged. Muffled by water. He went to the kitchen and grabbed a flashlight. Headed outside without thinking. The trail to the lake was shorter now, somehow. Or he was walking faster. Either way, the trees pressed closer, and the air felt like it resisted him, thick with moisture and pressure. At the lake, the water was moving. Not with wind. It pulsed. Like breath. He stepped to the edge. The surface flexed. He should have turned back. But instead, he knelt, leaned forward, and touched the surface. Instantly, cold. So deep it hurt. And in that moment, the chanting filled his head, no longer distant. Words. Not English. Not human. A rhythm of syllables that clawed at the inside of his skull. He pulled his hand back. It was wet. But not with water. Ink. Thick, black ink coated his palm. And when he looked at it closely, it moved. Small shapes wriggling within it. Letters. You are written. He fell backward. The surface of the lake rippled again. And this time, it smiled. Isaac scrambled backward through the wet leaves, his hands still slick with ink. It wasn't drying. It moved, even now, like it had its own pulse. Tiny letters twisted beneath the surface of the black smear, reshaping into symbols he almost recognized before they melted into something else. He wiped his palm on the ground, but the ink wouldn't come off. It clung to his skin, sank into it. He watched in horror as it faded, not by smearing, but by sinking into his veins. Dark lines snaked up his wrist like vines, disappearing under his sleeve. The lake rippled again. A sound came from beneath it, not a splash, not a voice. A breath. Then silence. Too much of it. The woods should have been alive with birdsong, with insects and rustling. Instead, it felt like the entire forest was holding its breath. Isaac stood slowly, trembling. Turned back toward the cabin. And found the trail gone. Not overgrown, erased. As if no one had ever walked it. He turned in a slow circle. The trees behind him were unfamiliar. Thicker. Taller. Closer. The path no longer led home. He ran. Branches whipped at his face. Roots caught at his boots. The ink in his veins itched, like static beneath the skin. His heartbeat roared in his ears. After what felt like hours, the cabin came into view, but it looked different. The windows were dark. The wood looked wetter somehow, soaked, like it had just risen from the bottom of a lake. He stepped up onto the porch. The door creaked open before he touched it. Inside. The floor was wet. Soaking wet. A trail of black footprints led from the door to the hallway. And around the corner, just out of sight. A voice whispered. "You came back wrong." Isaac froze at the threshold. The footprints were bare. Long toes splayed wide, like they had never known shoes. Ink shimmered within each one, as if whatever had left them still bled through the floor. And the voice. It had sounded like his own. Same rhythm. Same whisper. Same breath at the end of each word. He took one step inside. The floor groaned, wet with sighing beneath his boot. Then another voice whispered. From behind him. "You walked in." He turned. No one. Turned back. Another step forward. His boot now beside one of the prints. Close enough to see the ridges in the ink, like it had been pressed into him. Another whisper. From inside the wall. "You're part of it now." He followed the trail down the hallway. The lights flickered, bare bulbs above humming like wasps. The footprints led to the basement door. It was open. He hadn't opened it. Didn't even know the cabin had a basement. He leaned over the top step. It was pitch black. Something shifted in the dark below. He clicked on his flashlight. The beam cut down the narrow stairs. And landed on a figure. Standing at the bottom. Wet. Bare. And smiling. It was him. Same face. Same hair. Same scar above the eyebrow. But the eyes were wrong. All black. No whites. No color. Just deep, endless ink. And it said, softly. "You're late." Then it started up the stairs. Isaac stumbled backward. The figure climbed slowly, barefoot on the slick wooden steps, each one creaking as it pressed down. He shined the flashlight straight into its face. No flinch. The thing blinked once, slowly, and kept rising. "Don't," Isaac warned, raising the flashlight like a weapon. "Stop." The figure paused on the third step from the top. Its head tilted to the side, just like he did when thinking. A familiar gesture. Uncannily exact. "You're not supposed to be here," it said. Its voice was perfect. Not just similar. Identical. Who are you? Isaac managed to say. The figure smiled, water dripping from its chin. I'm the you who stayed. It took one more step. Now only a foot below. Isaac stepped back, bumping into the hallway wall. What does that mean? You went up. I went down. I was chosen. You resisted. You climbed the hill, looking for signal. You tried to run. I listened. The doppelganger's eyes shimmered, inky and alive. The lake doesn't take everyone. It takes the obedient. The hollow. Another step. It was on the landing now. Isaac dropped the flashlight in panic. It clattered across the floor, spun wildly. Darkness surged. Then light again, just enough to see the figure raise a hand. Palm out. A ripple ran across the skin, as if something inside shifted, like the body was just a container barely holding form. But we're out of balance now, it said. One story. Two narrators. That can't last. Isaac bolted. Through the hallway. Out the back door. He didn't look back. But he heard the thing call after him. A single word that hit like a knife. Incomplete. Isaac didn't stop running until the trees swallowed him whole. The woods at night felt thicker. Closer. Like every branch leaned in to listen, every root twisted to trip. His breath came ragged, burning his lungs, but he didn't slow. Couldn't. Behind him, the house creaked. Then it laughed. Not the walls or the wind. The house. It laughed like someone reading a punchline only they understood. He didn't stop until he collapsed beside the lake. Even then, he didn't look at it. He faced the dirt. Curled against a mossy stone. Tried to breathe quietly. The wind picked up, and brought with it the faintest sound, pages turning. He sat up slowly. The lake was silent. But the forest wasn't. That sound was coming from everywhere now. From above, below, behind. Pages. Thousands of them. Turning. Flipping. Rustling like dry leaves and whispering voices. Then, a figure stepped from the trees. Not the doppelganger. Someone else. Thin. Old. Draped in something that looked like parchment, sewn together into robes that trailed behind him like loose paper. He had no eyes. Just ink bleeding down his face where they should have been. He didn't speak. Just tilted his head and held out his hand. In his palm, a pen. Isaac backed away. No, the figure didn't move. But the wind behind him spoke. Dozens of voices layered together. You don't have to run. You just have to write. Finish the page. Balance the story. Then, from the lake. A massive, slow bubble surfaced. Followed by a whisper, deep and low, you are not yet written right. Isaac stared at the figure before him. The man of paper. The one with ink tears where eyes should be. His outstretched hand didn't shake. The pen in his palm gleamed black, even in the near-total darkness, slick, like it had just been dipped. The wind stilled. Everything waited. Isaac whispered, I'm not one of you. The figure didn't respond. But the forest did. A slow, rustling murmur through the trees, almost human. A chorus made from 1,000 dry voices turning pages with wet fingers. You were made for this. Isaac backed away. No, the pen twitched. As if it heard him. It began to rise, on its own, hovering an inch above the figure's palm, trembling slightly. Isaac turned and ran. The paper man didn't follow. But the pen did. It streaked through the air behind him, trailing ink like a comet. Not flying. Chasing, as if it smelled his hesitation, his unfinished thoughts. He stumbled into the lake trail. The cairns were gone. So were the trees along the path. In their place, pages. Dozens of them. Sheets of old parchment nailed to stumps, pinned to rocks, fluttering in the brush. Each one bore a single line, in the same jagged, slanted hand as the note from the porch. You saw her. You were chosen when you came here. You are the last signature. Finish the ending. Finish yourself. He turned in a full circle. All around him, the world had become a draft. He fell to his knees, hands in the dirt. It felt wrong, soft, like wet paper. And beneath his fingers, words began to rise. Not from ink. From his blood. The ground was writing him. Isaac tore his hands from the dirt. Blood slicked his fingertips, but the ground beneath him pulsed, like a heartbeat made of pulp and ink. The words forming in the soil weren't random. They spelled out his name. Isaac Cole, 1987. No death date. Because it wasn't over. Not yet. The hovering pen dropped beside him, point first into the ground. It stuck there. Still trembling. Waiting. He staggered to his feet. Backed away. The trail had narrowed behind him. The forest pressed in tight, branches now made of paper, bark warped with text. Leaves crinkled with half-formed sentences. He turned and ran again. Back toward the lake. Because there was nowhere else to run. He burst from the trees, feet slipping on damp stones, and stumbled to the shoreline. The lake was still. Too still. Then the surface cracked. Not like ice. Like glass. A perfect fracture ran across it, followed by another. Tiny slivers spreading from the center, as if something beneath pressed upward. The ink in his veins itched. Burned. He fell to his knees again. His skin along his forearm bubbled, letters pushing through the flesh, like typewritten scars. They weren't in English. They weren't in any language he knew. But they meant something. And then, from the heart of the lake, something rose. Slow. Massive. A tower? No. A face. A face made of pages. Shifting. Layered. Eyes ink dark and shifting like oil. It looked down on him. And in 100 voices, it spoke. We wrote the world to keep what waits. You are the page that breaks the binding. You are the pen. Isaac screamed. But no sound came. Only words spilled from his mouth. Letters. Syllables. Tiny bits of ink. The story had begun writing through him. Isaac clutched his throat. The letters kept coming. No breath. No scream. Just ink-stained syllables streaming from between his teeth, falling into the dirt like spilled type. He tried to stop. Tried to will it shut. But his jaw moved on its own, mouth forming phrases he didn't understand, each one accompanied by a deeper echo beneath the ground. The thing in the lake, the face of pages, watched silently. It wasn't angry. It wasn't pleased. It was simply waiting. Behind Isaac, the trees moved. Not the wind. Not animals. The trees themselves. They bent forward, creaking, listening. Their bark peeled back in places, revealing ink veins and shifting text beneath. Branches dropped strips of paper like shedding skin. Each one drifted down and landed silently in the dirt, until the ground around him was littered with sentences. He recognized one, you should not have answered the knock. He saw another. Do not look at the lake at night. And another, there is no such thing as forgetting. Only delaying the edit. He tried to stand. Couldn't. The ground clutched him now. His knees sunk an inch into soil that had turned soft, like a half-dried book. The lake face leaned closer. Its massive lips parted. Not to speak, but to read. And it read him. The ink on his arms glowed faintly. The script across his veins pulsed. Isaac gasped. Breath finally returned, but it wasn't his. It felt borrowed. Thin. Ancient. The face spoke one word. Not shouted. Not whispered. Spoken with absolute clarity, turn. The trees all shifted at once. The sky rippled like paper. The ground beneath Isaac flipped. And for one impossible moment, he was falling upward into a story written in reverse. Isaac tumbled through ink. Not water, not air, ink. Thick and weightless at the same time. It clung to his skin but didn't slow him. He spun backward, head over heels, through black space filled with shifting words, spiraling letters, pages torn and swirling like leaves in a storm. Images passed him in reverse, the cabin rebuilding itself from collapse. The doppelganger descending back into the basement. The pen lifting off the ground and returning to the figure's hand. The blood draining back into his skin. And then, silence. A single page floated in front of him. Blank. Except for one sentence slowly scrawling itself across the center, "You must rewrite what was let in." He reached for the page. Touched it. The world jerked. The lake was gone. The woods. The sky. He sat at a desk. Old oak. Rough-edged. A candle burned beside him. The chair beneath him groaned as he shifted. Outside, nothing. Not darkness. Not light. Just a great, flat absence. The window looked out on a world unwritten. On the desk, before him, was the sketchbook. The same one from the attic. The one he'd never opened. Except now, it was already open. Half-filled. Each page held a drawing, hand-sketched, raw, of every scene he'd lived through. The knock at the door. The cairn by the lake. The other Isaac. The lake's face. All of it. And the next page? Blank. Waiting. The pen sat beside it. Still trembling. Right. The voice came from behind him. Low. Feminine. Close. He turned slowly. And saw her. The woman from the lake. Her face dripping black water, her mouth filled with letters. No eyes. No nose. Just a book sewn shut across her throat. But still, she spoke. Write us back in. Isaac couldn't speak. The woman stood impossibly still. Water dripped from her dress in steady rhythm. Her sewn-shut mouth didn't move, but her voice filled the room like smoke. We were written out. Forgotten. Erased. She stepped forward. The floor didn't creak. You are the page now. Isaac gripped the edge of the desk, knuckles white. What are you? Her head tilted. Not sharply, but with a slow reverence. Like a priest bowing toward something older than faith. We are the draft between the worlds. The scribbled note never sent. The story before your story. She pointed to the blank page. It rippled slightly, alive. The lake is only the ink. The cabin, the pen. You were meant to be the hand. Isaac's voice cracked. I don't want to write for you. The woman's smile didn't show teeth. But it felt like it did. You already have. She waved her hand. The sketchbook flipped back through pages rapidly, until it stopped. On a page Isaac didn't recognize. One he didn't draw. It showed a man at a desk. This desk. A woman behind him. A pen in hand. Below the sketch, words were scrawled. He thought he was the author. But he was the invitation. Isaac stood so fast his chair clattered back. The candle flickered. The woman stepped forward again. Ink spilled from her feet, pooling on the wooden floor. She extended one hand. Black veins pulsed across her skin. And in her palm, another pen. This one was bone white. The tip was red. Still wet. "Finish what they started," she said. "Or we finish you." The red-tipped pen hovered in her palm, unnaturally still. Isaac didn't take it. Didn't move. The air had thickened. Every breath felt like inhaling damp paper. His skin itched beneath his clothes, like he was being rewritten cell by cell. He shook his head. "No," he whispered. "I won't finish this for you." The woman didn't blink. Didn't speak. She simply closed her fingers around the pen. The desk groaned. The book before him bled. A dark line of ink oozed from the spine and spread across the open blank page, forming a single word in jagged script: refusal. And then, the world shuddered. Not shook. Shuddered, like something massive beneath it had rolled in its sleep. The candle went out. Total blackness. But Isaac wasn't blind. The darkness was full of shapes. Silhouettes, barely visible. Too thin, too tall. Dozens. Hundreds. Lurking at the edge of the room where light had once reached. He heard them breathing. Wet, hungry. Something brushed his shoulder. A finger? A root? A line of text? And then the woman whispered, "You do not understand your place in the story." She stepped closer. Isaac could smell the lakewater now, brackish and ancient. She pressed the red-tipped pen into his hand. He tried to drop it. It stayed. Fused to his palm like a second thumb. "It was never about finishing the story," she said. "It was about correcting the ending." The desk shone. The candle flared back to life. And the sketchbook opened on its own, to a page that had his name as the title. And below it, in smaller print, "Last draft. All errors must be consumed." Isaac stared at the page bearing his name. The red-tipped pen burned cold in his hand, its weight unfamiliar, like holding a piece of bone not meant to leave a grave. The page didn't feel like paper anymore. It felt alive. Its surface pulsed faintly, as if it were breathing beneath his gaze. The words at the top glared back, "Last draft. All errors must be consumed." "What does that mean?" Isaac croaked. The woman stepped beside him. Her feet made no sound. The shadows in the corners of the room leaned inward, eager, trembling with anticipation. "It means you have been written wrong," she whispered. "Your life contains edits. Interventions. Things that don't belong." Isaac clenched his jaw. "I didn't ask for any of this." "Neither did we," she said, her sewn mouth unmoving. "You were drafted, like all the others." The candle flickered violently, casting grotesque, looping shadows across the walls. The figures at the edge of the room seemed closer now. Their outlines clearer. One of them had his face. Another wore his clothes from the day he arrived at the lake. They weren't echoes. They were versions. Failed attempts. Every time you turned back. Every time you ignored the signs. Every time you chose silence over action, we kept rewriting. You are the last version before it collapses. Isaac's hands trembled. The pen twitched in his fingers, craving motion. It didn't want to be held. It wanted to write. He turned his eyes to the blank line below his name. "What happens if I refuse again?" The woman placed a cold hand on his shoulder. "Then we erase the page. We erase you." The shadows around the room hissed in agreement. And from the dark, a new voice. Soft, small, afraid, whispered, "Please. I don't want to be erased again." Isaac turned. One of the shadows had stepped forward. It was a child. A boy. And he had Isaac's eyes. Isaac couldn't look away. The boy stood barefoot on the wooden floor, drenched in ink that dripped steadily from his hair and fingertips. His expression was one of quiet terror, but not for Isaac, for himself. As if he had already been erased once, and was terrified of the next time. "Who are you?" Isaac asked, voice low, shaking. The boy looked up. And when he spoke, the word struck deep, "I was the first version." The room fell silent. Even the shadows stilled. "I didn't want to go near the lake," the boy continued. "I stayed in the cabin. I closed the blinds. I kept the lights on. I thought if I waited long enough, it would all go away." His lip quivered. But stories don't go away. They just wait for the right reader. Isaac stepped closer, instinct overriding fear. The boy looked like he had the night the adoption fell through. Same eyes. Same quiet sadness. Like a ghost of every almost he'd ever carried. "You're me," he said. The boy nodded. "And you were erased?" The woman spoke again, voice like torn silk. "He was the silence draft. He left too many blanks. He feared the ink. We crossed him out." The boy winced at the words. His form flickered, for just a moment, edges fraying like the corner of a page too long thumbed. "I came back," the boy whispered. "I always come back. But I lose more each time." Isaac's hand curled tighter around the pen. The candle burned lower. The shadows crept in. A faint rumbling stirred beneath the floorboards, the sound of a story turning its final page. Isaac looked down at the line beneath his name. The page was still blank. But in the distance, outside the window that overlooked nothing, he saw ripples. The lake was coming closer. Or the world was falling into it. He didn't know anymore. Only that he had to make a choice. The pen in his hand, or the boy before him. "You have one sentence," the woman said. "Write wisely." Isaac stared at the blank line beneath his name. The pen pulsed in his grip, red tip twitching like a heartbeat. The weight of 1,000 versions of himself pressed against the walls, the erased, the overwritten, the unfinished. They watched in silence. The boy stepped closer, voice small. "If you write what they want, they'll take us all." Isaac looked into his eyes, his own eyes, and understood, this wasn't just a draft. It was a trap. Every sentence written gave them more power, more shape, more permanence. To write was to surrender. To write was to seal their return. But to refuse meant being erased. The shadows grew impatient. They circled, closing in. "Time ends when ink dries," the woman said. Isaac lifted the pen. The room held its breath. He pressed the tip to the page. A word formed. The woman leaned forward. The candle dimmed. The child trembled. And Isaac wrote, "This story is a lie." The room screamed. Not the people. The room. The wood split, the walls warped inward, the shadows twisted and howled, contorting like worms on fire. The ink on the floor hissed, steaming. The woman staggered back. Her sewn mouth tore open, not to scream, but to gasp. "No. Truth binds. Lies unwrite." Isaac grabbed the child's hand. "Run." They didn't ask where. The window shattered. Not into glass. Into pages. Sheets of paper exploded outward, a blizzard of ruined narrative, and through it all they ran, across the floor, down a hall that hadn't existed seconds ago. The sketchbook behind them bled. From the lake, now rising into the sky like a black moon, came a sound like a chapter closing. Fum. The final punctuation. But they didn't stop. They dove through the window of white. And into something else. Not escape. Not yet. But a blank. Silence. Isaac floated. No ground. No sky. Just white. An endless, paper-flat void stretching forever in all directions. He held the boy's hand tightly, the red-tipped pen still clutched in his other. They didn't fall. They didn't move. They simply were. The world had vanished. The cabin. The ink. The woman with the sewn mouth. The lake face made of pages. But Isaac knew this wasn't safety. This was the margin. A place between edits. A place where stories paused to catch their breath. He turned slowly. The boy drifted beside him, head low, eyes distant. "Where are we?" Isaac asked. The boy shook his head. "Nowhere yet. We haven't been written." The phrase chilled him. Isaac looked down at his own body. He was fading. Not disappearing, unforming. His skin paled into sketch. His arms thinned into lines. His fingers bled graphite at the tips. The pen in his hand pulsed again. Still red. Still ready. It would never stop until he used it. He spun slowly in the blankness. Somewhere, far off, a page fluttered. Just one. A single sheet falling like snow in the distance. Isaac stared at it. Then heard something else, scritch, scritch, scritch. The sound of a pencil moving across paper. From behind him. He turned. A shadow approached. Not tall. Not monstrous. Just a man. Old. Dressed plainly. Hair white and wild, beard unkempt. He walked across the void like it was solid. Under one arm, a book the size of a coffin. In his other hand, a pencil sharpened to a needle. He smiled. Finally caught up to the draft, he said, voice hoarse. Isaac squinted. "Who are you?" The man stopped 3 paces away. The first one who tried to end the story. He opened the book. And showed Isaac the final page. It was blank. Except for one line, scrawled in red, "Only the unwritten can resist the pen." Isaac stared at the old man's book. The phrase burned into him like a curse and a promise at once, "Only the unwritten can resist the pen." What does that mean? Isaac asked, voice rough with static. "I'm already written." The old man smiled sadly. "Not all of you. Not yet." He pointed to the boy beside Isaac. "That part of you, that was your blank. Your first page. You left him behind too many times. But he never stopped waiting." The boy said nothing. He just looked up at Isaac with hollow eyes and squeezed his hand tighter. The old man ran a thumb along the coffin-sized book's edge. "They used to be stories, you know. Real ones. Passed down in campfires, carved into trees, forgotten under beds." He looked up. But something learned how to eat stories. To live inside the telling. That thing beneath the lake, it's not the monster. It's the mouth. Isaac's grip on the red pen tightened. "And this? What does this do?" The old man's face darkened. "That's the final key. The pen that seals. Or severs." He stepped forward, voice lowering to a whisper. "You have one chance, Isaac. One true draft left. But you can't use it to write. You have to use it to undo." Isaac shook his head. "I tried. I wrote that the story was a lie. And it bought you time," the old man said. "But now you have to burn the book." He handed Isaac something else. A match. Old. Wooden. Waxed at the tip. Isaac looked at the boy. Then the pen. Then the match. You won't get another ending, the man said. He stepped back. And the void around them trembled. A sound tore through the white, the lake, rising again. The blankness around them cracked like paper catching flame. From above came a shape descending. The face of the lake. Ink dripping. Eyes like opened scars. And from its maw, you will never finish without us. Isaac looked at the pen. Then at the match. Then back to the book in the man's arms, and made his choice. Isaac's hand trembled. The match felt fragile, like a truth too thin to hold. The pen in his other hand pulsed with quiet hunger, red ink glistening like a wound that refused to heal. Above, the face of the lake unfolded. Not from water. From narrative. Its surface cracked open into teeth, rows of sharpened margins, a mouth lined with pages that fluttered like tongues. And from its hollow eyes, words spilled in ancient languages that bled the ears. You belong to us, it hissed. You are the story that escaped. Isaac turned to the old man. The boy clung to his side, staring at the massive face without blinking. Will this work? Isaac asked. The old man didn't answer. He only nodded. Then placed the great book, his life's draft, on the white ground between them. Stories fear fire more than ink, he said softly. Isaac crouched beside the book. Pages fluttered in anticipation. He struck the match. It hissed to life. The shadows above screamed. The face roared. Ink rained down from above in furious rivulets, burning through the white void like acid. It reached for the boy. For Isaac. For the match. Isaac didn't hesitate. He touched the flame to the edge of the book. It caught immediately. And it screamed. The fire didn't burn orange. It burned white, bright as a sunrise on a blank page. It consumed the cover, then the spine, then every dark paragraph ever written. The void shook. Cracks tore through it like ripped paper. The mouth above shrieked. Not in pain, but in rage. You are breaking the binding. We were almost real. You were our ending. Isaac turned to the boy. His face shimmered, clearing, like fog burning off glass. He smiled. You did it, he whispered. Then, he vanished. Not erased. Released. The flame roared higher. Isaac shielded his eyes as the book disintegrated, its words curling and peeling away into nothing, like they had never been written. Pages twisted upward in tight spirals of light and vanished before hitting the air. And with each page burned, the world changed. The ink rain from above began to dry mid-fall, turning brittle and cracking like glass. The massive lake face twisted in on itself, no longer vast and endless, but folding, warping, collapsing. It howled with a voice like thunder being torn from a throat. No ending. No voice. No form. We waited. We whispered. We writ you. The ground beneath Isaac trembled. Less a surface now, more a loose scatter of dying thoughts. Words that had once held up entire scenes broke apart under his feet. The old man fell to his knees beside the burning book. His beard caught a single tongue of fire, but he didn't flinch. You're unwriting the lake, he said. Keep going. Isaac gripped the pen. The red tip bled freely now, staining the ground with every breath. He stepped forward and did the only thing left, he began to write a new sentence. Not to obey the story. Not to finish it. But to end it differently. On a stretch of ash where the book had been, he wrote, "The lake forgot its name." The tremor surged outward. The lake's face convulsed. Its eyes rolled back. From deep within it came a final cry, an echo of every narrator it ever consumed, do not leave us nameless. And then, silence. No explosion. No thunder. Just quiet. The face of the lake folded in on itself like a closing book. The void cracked from horizon to horizon. The pen in Isaac's hand turned to dust. And for the first time since arriving, he felt air. Real air. Wind. Distant birdsong. He turned slowly, and saw the cabin. Standing. Quiet. Alone. As if none of it had ever happened. Isaac stood at the edge of the new world. The void was gone, no more pages, no more ink. The air smelled of pine and earth, damp with recent rain but fresh. He took a step forward and felt the cool bite of real grass beneath his boots. No more pulp. No more softness. The lake was still there. But it was different. Smaller. Silent. Its surface no longer black, but the muddy gray of forgotten ponds. No reflections. No ripples. Just a body of water like any other. And the cabin, it looked almost normal now. Weathered wood. A sagging roof. Glass in the windows, unbroken. Smoke rose faintly from the chimney, though he hadn't lit a fire. He approached slowly. Half afraid it would vanish again. That the paper would curl back into place. That something would knock from within. But it didn't. He reached the porch. The third step still creaked. Inside, the lights were off. The air cool. Still no furniture, save for the table he'd eaten at, the cot he'd slept on, and the desk in the far corner. The sketchbook was gone. So was the pen. In its place, a sheet of paper. Folded neatly. Isaac picked it up with a trembling hand. On the outside, written in perfect, black lettering, "You unbound us." He opened it. Blank inside. Completely. But as he stared at it, a shape began to rise from beneath the surface. Pressed into the fibers of the paper, embossed, not written, was a fingerprint. His own. It pulsed faintly. Just once. Then faded. Isaac dropped the page. Backed away from the desk. The fire in the hearth sparked once, then caught. He stood in the glow, unsure if he'd won anything at all. But he was alone now. Utterly alone. Except. From the hallway, a soft, child's voice, "Can I come out now?" Isaac froze. The fire in the hearth crackled. Wind outside brushed the window glass softly, like fingertips over a drum. But that voice, the boy. The first version. The one who had vanished when the book burned. "Can I come out now?" Isaac turned slowly. The hallway was empty. The door to the basement stood ajar again. He hadn't opened it. He hadn't gone near it. "Hello?" he called, unsure whether he was more afraid of a reply or silence. The voice came again. This time quieter, more hesitant. "It's safe now, isn't it? You fixed it." Isaac stepped forward, heart thudding. Down the hall. To the top of the basement steps. The air there was still colder than the rest of the cabin. Still damp. But no longer wrong. He knelt at the top step and spoke gently. "Who are you?" Silence. Then a whisper, "I think I'm the part of you you left behind." A chill passed through him. The part he left behind. The boy hadn't been a version. He had been something truer, something closer. Isaac spoke carefully. "And if I say yes, if I say you can come out, what happens?" A long pause. Then the soft sound of bare feet on wood. A shape stepped into view at the bottom of the stairs. Small. Pale. Eyes wide, not afraid, but searching. The boy looked up at Isaac. Then maybe, you get to start over. Isaac hesitated. Then nodded. Come on. Let's go home. The boy smiled faintly. And climbed the stairs. One step at a time. When he reached the top, he took Isaac's hand. His skin was cold. But solid. Real. Together, they walked back to the fire. And for the first time since the lake, the shadows didn't move. They simply rested. The fire burned low, casting golden ripples across the cabin walls. Isaac sat in the old armchair, the boy curled up on the floor nearby, watching the flames as if they held a story only he could read. The night outside was quiet, too quiet, and yet not empty. It was the stillness of a tale well told, not the silence of something waiting. Do you remember any of it? Isaac asked softly. The boy shook his head. Not like before. Only, shadows. Feelings. He looked up. You made it different. Isaac stared into the fire. I tried. I didn't know if I could. You did. The boy smiled faintly. You let go of the pen. Isaac touched his palm absent-mindedly. The mark was gone. No ink. No scar. No trembling red light begging to write. Will it stay this way? He asked. The boy shrugged. Only if you stop telling the story. They sat in silence for a while. The flames crackled. A log collapsed into glowing coals. Outside, the wind picked up, and brought with it a faint sound. Not voices. Not whispers. Wings. Birds. Real ones. A morning call. Somewhere, deep in the forest, a fox barked. The world had moved on. Something loosened in Isaac's chest. The boy yawned. Do we sleep now? He asked. Isaac nodded. I think we can. He rose and fetched a blanket from the cot, wrapped it around the boy, and laid him on the couch. The boy's eyes drifted closed. Will you dream? Isaac asked. The boy mumbled through half-sleep, only if you don't write it. Isaac chuckled softly and stoked the fire one last time. Then sat by the window. The lake was still there. But it no longer watched. It only reflected. Like it always should have. Morning came gently. Isaac watched the sun bleed through the trees, soft beams cutting across the lake's surface. The water shimmered like nothing unnatural had ever touched it. No ink. No eyes. Just light and shadow. The boy still slept. The cabin was warm with firelight and dawn. Isaac stepped onto the porch, barefoot, squinting into the golden haze. The air was clean. Crisp. Real. Birds called to each other in short bursts. A deer moved through the brush nearby, hooves barely audible. The world had remembered itself. He looked out over the lake. No faces. No voices. Just ripples spreading slowly from the center as a breeze caught the surface. And yet, Isaac stepped down to the shore. He stared into the reflection. And saw himself. But not just himself. All of them. For a split second, no longer than a blink, he saw the other versions. The frightened man who never opened the book. The angry one who fought the ink. The hollow-eyed one who surrendered to the doppelganger. All of them stood behind his reflection, just beyond the light. And they nodded. Not mournfully. Not with blame. But with peace. They were gone, yes. But not erased. They had helped end the draft. Isaac closed his eyes. He didn't cry. There was no grief left. Only quiet. When he opened his eyes again, the lake showed only one man. Him. Whole. Present. Alive. He turned and walked back up the path, the sound of his steps accompanied by birdsong and breeze. At the porch, the boy waited with sleepy eyes and a steaming mug between his hands. "I don't remember how I like my tea," the boy said. Isaac smiled. "We'll find out." They sat together. And the lake, for the first time in all its long memory, did not write them back. The day passed softly. No strange voices. No ink. Just wind, and tea, and the slow warmth of a fire that didn't whisper. Isaac and the boy spent the morning cleaning the cabin, sweeping away dust and cobwebs, rearranging what little furniture there was. Each room felt more theirs with every hour. The old sketchbook never reappeared. By sunset, they sat on the porch together. The lake shimmered in the golden light. Isaac rocked gently in the wooden chair, its rhythm familiar now. The boy sat on the porch rail, kicking his feet, humming a tune neither of them remembered learning. "I feel like I'm getting smaller," the boy said. Isaac turned to him. "What do you mean?" "I don't know," the boy shrugged. "Like I'm folding back in. Like I'm not supposed to be out here forever." Isaac looked at him carefully. And he understood. The boy hadn't come out of the basement. He had come out of Isaac. Out of the pages of an unfinished self. Now that the story was told, now that the ink had dried and the pen was dust, the boy's purpose was complete. Isaac reached out and took his hand. "I'll remember you," he said. The boy smiled. "That's all I ever wanted." The wind shifted. Leaves danced across the porch. The boy blinked slowly, then leaned against Isaac's shoulder. His breathing slowed. His form softened, not in sadness, not in pain. Just a peaceful fade, like a dream you don't need to hold on to. And then, he was gone. Not with a flash. Just an absence. Isaac sat for a long while. The lake didn't stir. The stars came out. No pages turned. No drafts waited. The story, at last, had an ending. And it was quiet. Inside, he found a blank notebook in the drawer by the bed. It wasn't the old sketchbook. It was fresh. Untouched. No ink. He opened it. Smiled. And on the first page, in his own words, wrote, "This is not a horror story. This is a story about leaving one behind." He closed the book. Blew out the candle. And slept. Dreamlessly. Forever free from the lake.